on, guys? Fishing with Flair here. Back to do a video. I'm going to do a video today on just basically the different types of hooks and when you would use them for the different types of baits. I mean, there's hundreds of hooks on the market, and for some of you people that are new to bass fishing or don't know that much about it, I'm sure when you walk down the hook aisle of the Bass Pro Shop, Shields, Cabela's, whatever, it's probably a little overwhelming because you don't know what's right for which condition and that kind of stuff. So I'll basically go through kind of the basic, the three different types of hooks. We're going to go with the offset round bend, offset extra wide gap, also referred to as an EWG, and then a straight shank. Going to go through and just tell you which baits I would use each one for, and when and why I would use them for that certain situation. So first we'll start off with my personal favorite, the one I use the most, which is the standard offset round bend hook. I use this probably on 90% of my plastics, just day in, day out. This one gets the job done. I'll grab a bigger hook so it's probably easier to see. So just the standard round bend there. And basically I'll use this for the majority of the lures that I have laid out, but I'll kind of go through the ones that you really want just the round bend for, and that would be your Senko style baits, basically any worm baits, but Senko style and ribbon tail especially is what you're going to want to use for your round bends. And the reason for that is just the hookup ratio with round bends is a lot better than EWGs, and the whole purpose behind an EWG is because if you're using like a thick, bulky piece of plastic that balls up down on the end of the hook, you want a big extra wide gap so the hook is still exposed and can still hook the fish. So you want to use on like this is like a 10-inch, this is a Gambler ribbon tail 10-inch worm, and you'll just standard Texas rig it. And for something like a 10-inch worm, I might use like a 5/0 round bend, and it'll come out looking something like that. That's what I'd use for that, as well as, like I said, the Senko. This is the Gambler Fat Ace here, and I'd use that. I'd probably use on the Fat Ace. I'd probably use a 5/0 as well, and you just standard Texas rig them just like you would anything else. And that's because on a worm the plastic is thin. It doesn't ball up on the bottom of the hook, and doesn't affect your hookup ratio. So whenever you can, I would personally, from my experience, I would say whenever possible use a round bend, but you don't want to use it all the time because it will hinder your hookup ratios if you're using it for something like the Gambler Big Easy swim bait or something like that. You're not going to want to use an EWG, or sorry, a round bend for something like that, just because it's just too big and too thick and too big of a bait for a standard round bend. So now I'll go into the EWG, and I guess I should say, for me personally, I like using round bends, and this is like a beaver style bait. This is called the Ugly Otter, made by Gambler. But I would personally use a round bend with the Ugly Otter or any beaver style bait, but I know a lot of guys like to use EWG, so it can go either way. So if you just got to figure out what your preference is. I feel like I lose a lot more fish than EWG just because of the way it's shaped and stuff like that, but I will use it when it's necessary. So for something like this, like a beaver style bait, you can go either way. You can go with an EWG or standard round bend. For today's purposes, I'll rig it up on an EWG just to kind of show you what it's going to look like. Grab an EWG out of the box here. I think that's probably about a 3 or 4/0 EWG. This is a light wire one right here. It doesn't really matter. But you'll just kind of Texas rig it like you would any other bait. And like I'll kind of show you the purpose of having an EWG versus a standard round bend. So when you're done rigging it, it'll look something similar to that. I'll straighten it out just a little bit, but it'll look something like that. And the whole purpose is because when you get bit, the plastic, it gets bent down like this. You've seen, like, if you get bit and then you set the hook and they're not there, it'll look something kind of like that sometimes. And that's called balling up on the hook. When it balls up on the hook, that's what it looks like. See how it's kind of all balled and mashed up? So if that happens and you're using a standard round bend, then the hook isn't going to be as exposed as well as it would be if you were using an EWG like I am now. But like I said, for something like a beaver style bait, you can use either one, but I just kind of showed you the purpose of using an EWG versus a standard round bend. Is because when it balls up on the hook, you're going to want an EWG. So that's kind of what it looks like. And I'll rig up the Gambler Big Easy. For something like the Gambler Big Easy, I use a 5 or 6/0 EWG. something like that, like a big old hook like that. And you'll want to kind of rig it just like this. Let's see, there we go. Go straight down, come out the belly side, and then come back up through. Like that. So that's kind of what it looks like. As you can see, it's kind of a big profiled bait, and like I said, if you're using something like this, you're gonna want to get maximum hookup ratio. See how fat that bait is. If the bass pushes that down and you're using a round bait, it'd stop about right there versus an EWG. See how much hookup ratio, how much better hookup ratio you get with an EWG. That's why you use an EWG for swim baits. Any big bulky style baits that'll ball up and hinder the hookup ratio, I'd use that. And the last one is called a straight shank. And the only straight shanks I use are flipping hooks. The only time I use a straight shank is when I'm punching or flipping heavy cover. Something like that. I think that's either a VMC or a Chokar heavy cover flipping hook. And this is a straight shank. It's got the keeper on the top. Some of them have them, some of them don't. With that little black thing, it's called a keeper. And like I said, I'll use it when I'm punching. It's pretty much when I'll use it, or like flipping really heavy grass or just heavy bushes and cover. You just get better hookup ratio when it's not an offset hook. And that's why you would want to use it, but you don't want to use it all the time because it's not the most weedless and snagless, plus it tears up your baits quite a bit. So how you're going to want to rig this is just your standard Texas rig. You're going to want to go down on the top and then out at the bottom. Push it all the way up and then rotate it. And you're going to want to rotate it so then the keeper popped out just like that. You can see there, and then you're just going to kind of swing back down and just Texas rig it. Looks like something like that. That's your standard straight shank hook, and that's what it's going to look like when it's rigged up on your plastic. And basically, like I said, the reason why you use this is because just the hookup ratio is better. When you don't have an offset on your hook, it's a straight shot. Think about when the bass bites it, that's how much is sticking out. There you go, now you can see it, how much is sticking out. So when the hook comes through the bait, the bass bites it, it's a big old gap there. Like I said, use better hookup ratios. You're going to want to use a Snell knot with this, so it's automatically going to kick up the hook and get a better hookup ratio. But like I said, you don't want to use it all the time because with this big black bait keeper on there, as soon as a bass pulls that down past the bait keeper, let's say you had a fish, pulls it down, your bait is pretty much ruined. You might be able to use it one other time or grab some mended glue or soft plastic glue, maybe fix it, but you're only going to want to use it when you have to, and that's in heavy cover, grass, punching, that kind of stuff. And you're going to want to use it for just flipping and pitching baits. Right here is the Gambler Why Not. This is my favorite punching bait, and you'll use it for this. I've seen people use them for beaver baits like the Ugly Otters. I mean, I've even seen them use it for worms, but you're going to want to use it when you're doing close combat pitching. You're not going to want to, if you're using a straight shank, you're not going to want to cast it like a Carolina rig and drag it and over rocks and stuff. It's just not going to do that well. But if you're flipping and pitching, 10 feet or less into heavy brush and stuff like that, you can go for a straight shank. It's totally fine. I rarely use them. Like I said, I only use them for when I'm punching and stuff like that. But if you're just going to go to the store and you're going to buy one hook, my recommendation would be a 4/0 offset round bend hook. I use the 4/0 for beaver style baits like the Ugly Otter, for the Why Not. You can use a 4/0 for the Cincos, ribbon tail worms. The only one I wouldn't use it for is big bulky baits like the swim bait. But other than that, I mean, a 4/0 offset round bend is kind of hard to beat. And then people go into the gauge of wire, light wire, heavy wire, magnum wire, that kind of stuff. I'll probably touch up that on a different video, so this one's not quite so long. But in case you really need to know right now, a light wire you're going to want to use when you're not flipping in heavy cover, when you're casting, when you're not using braided line, when you're more finesse fishing using smaller profile baits, you're going to want to use that. But when you're flipping and pitching heavy cover, you're going to want to use a big, thick, stout hook like that one because it won't bend out. That's the whole purpose of the gauge of wire, is whether it's going to bend out or not, how strong the hook is. Thicker wire gauge hooks are hard to get penetrated into the bass's mouth, so you're going to have to set the hook a lot harder, which is why you're going to want to use braid or heavy fluorocarbon. So if you're using light line, you don't want to go with the thick, the big round hooks. You're going to want to go with the skinnier they're called light wire hooks. So that's it for today's video. If you have any questions, go ahead and comment. If there's a video, maybe more about hooks and weights or anything, really, go ahead and comment. I read every single comment. I try to respond to as many as I can. And just go ahead and comment a video that you'd like to see. And that's it. Thanks for watching.